Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Seven Story Podcast. That's what it's unofficially called, anyway. Here we have Brian J. Smith, who is a horror author, correct? I mean, given by the cover of your story, yeah, horror
Yes.
author. I mean, wait, your name is Horror Author 9 on, duh, right? He's a horror author who's written a litany of works. He's also written for anthologies and things of that nature. Awesome author. And you know what? I think you can introduce yourself better than I can. So we'll let you take it away and just tell the would-be audience, uh, about yourself, like just a little bit about you.
My name's Brian J. Smith. I'm the author of 10 novels, all in the horror, paranormal, mystery genre, just whatever I could mingle with horror in general. And I recently put out my second short story collection last summer. It's called Strange Discovery and Other Strange Discoveries. It's this one right here. I don't know if you guys can see it or not.
I might not be able to see it, but I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
But it's a short story collection. It's my second. My first short story collection came out in 2017. It had to do with a lot of like dark horror stories. This one here has a lot of strange dark tales. Like there's a guy who carves his initials on a tree. He starts to become one. There's a story about a guy who tries to harvest a kidney and has some unexpected results. And on top of that, there's a lot of kind of stories that make you kind of scratch your head and go, you know what? I think that could possibly happen. And this one was inspired from my love of The Twilight Zone.
Okay.
And Black Mirror. I love Twilight Zone. And, I've always loved anthology shows and anthologies in general. I grew up with Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, the 80s Twilight Zone series. I've always loved that kind of stuff. I've always loved them little short stories that kind of come to life. And that's where my love of short fiction came from.
Right.
I've read a lot of anthologies. I remember reading Night Shift by Stephen King when I was 12, 11. Yeah, I was about 11. I brought it home from the library, and my mom just flipped her lid, and my dad kind of came to my defense. He was like, we let them watch Jason and Freddy when they were little, and you're going to have a kitten about this.
Right.
And she let me read it. She's like, well, if you have nightmares, it's on you. You're 11. You can take it. So I didn't have nightmares, but I did earn my, love of storytelling way before I picked up a book. I used to tell my sister bedtime stories. I used to tell her the nice ones. I used to tell her the nice ones because the real ones would have given her nightmares.
Okay.
I couldn't tell her the real grim fairy tales because that would have
Right.
really, I mean, you don't tell a 5-year-old that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But my parents always told me that I was a good storyteller, that I told stories in a certain way, and I didn't really take it. I was like, well, I took it as a compliment, but I didn't take it as anything but that. And I started writing stories when I was in the 6th grade. Turned them in for extra credit. Gave my teacher's wife a nightmare. Yeah. She told him not to bring my stories home again to review over the weekend. She said, no, you're not allowed bringing them back here.
Okay.
And he's like, so I got to keep the stories here. So, and eventually I started to love it. I started to enjoy it. It became more than just a tool for boredom. It just became something that I eventually got into, and I started to like. I started to really enjoy it. You know?
Okay. Nice, nice. So we have we have a horror author through and through. And it's a nice change of pace because we've had a lot of fantasy authors and things of that nature. And we're
Yeah.
trying to diversify in like genres and stuff. So glad to like have a horror author, through and through. Someone that's a little more my speed. I like fantasy, but I kind of like that, because I read Stephen King too, like just coming up in terms of just reading books where I've read. I tried to read it, but I couldn't finish it. I got to like half of it before I stopped. I read The Stand. I read
Yeah.
Under the Dome. I've read some Stephen King short story collections. That's kind of where I get my, penchant for writing short stories as well. So,
Yeah.
we have something in common there.
What was the
And,
first one you read?
Out of Stephen King short story collections,
Any book of his.
any book of his,
Yeah.
first Stephen King book I read? Oh my God. Dang. The first one. I'm trying to think. Hold on. The first one. Yeah, I don't know if I can go back that far because
Yeah.
I know which ones I've read. Like I've read like The Bazaar of Dreams. That's a short
Yeah.
story
The
collection.
Bizarre Pet Dreams.
Yeah. Everything's Eventual.
Yeah.
Um I know it's like some of his short story collections have stories that were already like in other books and stuff like that.
Yeah. They were kind of
Yeah, so
they're
like
reprinted.
yeah, so I know, but man, like it's actually been years since I've read like it hasn't been that long since I haven't read a Stephen King novel, but it's been a couple years since I've like been reading fiction
Yeah.
consistently. So
Because I went from Night Shift to Salem's Lot.
oh yeah, okay.
And then I just started like I read Pet Cemetery.
Right.
The one that I actually read for the first time last year, because I was doing that, it was a book reading challenge. You had to read 24 books in 24 and within the year of 2024.
Right. Okay.
I actually sat down and read The Shining for the first time.
Really?
I could not get into it. I'd get to that second page and I would just be bored with it.
Right.
And it's nothing against him. It's just, okay, what's going on here? And eventually I had to literally buckle down and go, now I got to do this because it's part of the challenge. No matter what,
Right.
I got to read this book. And I started to love the book more than I liked the movie.
Oh, okay. Got you.
And
Yep.
I finally I read Under the Dome. Took me 3 months to read Under the Dome.
Really?
Yeah.
I read Under the Dome in 3 days, actually. That's a 1,000-page book. It took me 3 weeks to read The Stand. It took me 3 weeks to read The Stand, but it took me like 3 days to read Under the Dome. I don't know, because I was in like it's when I just moved to California and I was in an empty apartment, had nothing to do, so I was just reading books. And then, I just had Under the Dome and I just binge read it. And it just took me 3 days to like kind of just, go through it. I remember reading Under the Dome. Like that was.
I read Insomnia in 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
and
I don't think I've read that one.
That one kind of he likes to go into a lot of characterization.
Right.
He likes to tell you what's going on and then right in the middle, then lay down the action and what's going on. And a lot of people had trouble with that one. They were like, okay, come on, tell us what's next. We saw the picture of a little bald doctor. Who was the little bald doctor? What is he there for?
Right. Oh yeah. Speaking of, I do remember 2 that I read. I actually read and watched the movie adaptation of them. It was Gerald's Game and 1922.
Wow, that 1922 is good. I haven't seen Gerald's Game.
Oh yeah, Gerald's Game was the movie was pretty. The movie was pretty accurate. It was just like it's about the like the husband and wife going out on a little trip to try to rekindle the marriage, and then the right wants to relive some sexual fantasy, but she gets nervous, and then her husband dies of a heart attack, and then lays
Oh
on top of
shit.
her, and she's still chained to the bed,
Oh
and
man.
then she's there all night trying to get out of it and things like that, and it's just like a psychological, you know,
Wow.
and
Huh.
like it goes into her past, and it goes into like how she grew up and things like that. Just like it's kind of like one of those in the room with your thoughts, like
Yeah.
type of
Huh.
thing, like you're
Huh.
forced to confront yourself.
Kind of
So
sounds like isolation
yeah,
getting to you, because he tends to use the isolation thing, because if you watch The Mist, or if you've read The Mist,
The Mist. I don't think I've read that. There's a lot of Stephen King's books I haven't read, but
that
there's some
one's
I have.
very good. The book
Right.
is good. The book is very good. But if you notice, he likes to use that isolation. There's too many chiefs, not enough Indians. You got
Right.
the good side and you have the bad side, and
Yeah.
they're trying to like maneuver their way around each other, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually, like, boom, everything comes to a crashing collision. And that's what I like about his work, is he likes to play on your fears. He likes to play on how would people react if they were stuck in a supermarket
Right.
with this vicious mist outside that has creatures inside of it. They
Mm.
can't get out. They'll die.
Right.
There's a local pastor. She's a little like,
Yeah.
Starve, Wormwood, and, Armageddon and all that stuff there. And she's driving she's making up her own little Jim Jones congregation kind of thing going on.
Right.
So if you've never read it, I highly recommend that one. That is
Okay.
classic King, you know.
The Mist. All right. Yeah, I gotta dig back into Stephen King's works. I probably need some inspiration. Need some inspiration. And I noticed like one thing about his works is that they're really good at getting you through tough times.
Yeah.
Like if you're having a tough time, you read a Stephen King book, it's just like you just forget about everything else. It's like it's really good at that. But yeah, but we're not talking about Stephen King. We're talking
Yeah.
about you. So like,
Yeah.
you know, how like what was one story that was particularly difficult to write if you had like any, stories that just like had you stuck and you had to kind of like, you know, just figure it out.
Um, I'd have to say it'd be my novella Dark Avenues, because I'd lost a lot of good people at the time that I wrote that story.
Mm.
I'd lost two uncles, a grandma on my dad's side,
Mm.
and yeah, my mom, and then I would later on lose my dad the very next year. Like
Damn.
in 2018, I would lose my dad.
Oh
So
man.
it was kind of like, it's like my one of my uncles on my dad's side, he died in 2005. My grandmother on my dad's side, I think she died 3 years or 4 years later. And then my mom died in 2013, July 2013. And then one of my uncles on my mom's side, he passed away in September, 2 days before her birthday.
Mm.
So death was it was all around, and I was kind of sort of trying to, what can I do to get over the grief? What can I do to get over the misery? Well, they
Right.
say, write it out. And I'd written that story before, and it just I just put it away somewhere. I said, I'll tend to it later. So I pulled it back out after my mom died, about 3 years after my mom died, and worked on it, did a whole rewrite. And that book is about something that I loved doing when I was a child. We would do headstone rubbings. And those are where you put a piece of paper on a headstone and you rub chalk across it.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a colorful composition of what's in front of what's on the headstone. And I enjoyed doing it as a young adult, like in my 20s, but I stopped doing it there for a while because I couldn't really find the time. And I wanted to write a short story, a story that encompassed that headstone rubbing thing. So it's about a guy who lost his wife. She was shot, killed right in front of him.
Mm.
And they used to do these headstone rubbings. They used to go all over the world. Okay. They went and got Jim Morrison's headstone. They got Frank Sinatra's. Of course, I don't know if you can get to these actual headstones to do that, but I don't think you could. But he did that to kind of keep himself busy and hold off the grief. And he ends up getting this one headstone, and the spirit of this dead girl is following him. She's trying to tell him something, but he doesn't know. Because there's a scene in the story where he's mowing this woman's lawn, and this girl's standing right there in front of him, and she's got the hair all the way down to her eyes. And she starts trying to say something to him, and instead of repeating it, she tips her head back, and this nice jagged cut across her throat just bursts open like fish gills.
Mm-hmm.
And blood comes out, and it really messes up with him. He jumps back. So I wanted to incorporate death along with something that I enjoyed in the past, and I wanted to kind of put that together. But yet I also wanted to tell a story about justice. It can be done for those who lose a loved one.
Mm.
And they're not always gone. They're not gone from our lives. They're around there someplace.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So, what would you say, like, outside of, that time period, where death was all around you? Like, what would you say was the most difficult time in your writing journey? Or is the death and the writing inextricably tied, would you say?
It's time, because at times the writing tends to help me get over the grief. It tends to help me because some of us, like my mom, she used to always pat me on the back every time I got a story published. She never liked it that I didn't get paid for it, but she understood. She didn't like it, but she understood, and she would
Okay.
always show it around to everybody. But she would always, when she left, when she died, she wasn't there to pat me on the back anymore. So
Right.
without that, the writing helped me with the absence of
Mm.
that time period. There were times where I would just walk away and just be like this, and I'd have to kind of remind myself, do what she would want you to do. Keep writing. Don't quit.
Right.
Keep on writing. Keep making her proud.
Okay. Yeah, man. I mean, that's tough, like it really is tough, like losing, loved ones. That's always something that, just derails people regardless of like what their passion is. And it's a unique difficulty for a writer, because
Yeah.
you would think that you have this gift of words, right? Regardless of the genre you're in, you would think that writing out the emotion would be a bit easier because it's there and it's palpable, and you're good at describing things and translating it. But then it sort of becomes this like therapy to help you through those emotions, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like you usually just take those and then put it into the writing,
Yeah.
but now it's like the writing has to come into you and help, with the pain of that loss.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how like, writers tend to deal with, death and grief and things of that nature. So I mean, how do you think that, since we're on the subject, do you think that, despite the difficulty of those losses, do you think they've helped you on your writing journey? Any?
Yeah, yeah, because I always kind of think back like they would be proud. You know, I've I've published 10 books. I've
Nice.
published a creature feature, um, a supernatural uh, mystery. Um, what can I say? What you call it? Yeah, a eco splatterpunk thriller, a
Right.
zombie novel. Um, I will be publishing a splatter western later on this year, um,
Nice. Nice.
and um, I've I've just kept on going because I know that they would want me to keep going. They would want me to do the one thing that I love to do, and yet on the other hand, it kind of I know how they're going to feel because some of the stuff that I write, my mom would not read today. No, no, she'd be like, no, that's not right. Take that out. Because she never liked Cujo and she never liked Pet Cemetery.
Right. Right.
and um, and she, I mean, it kind of it can play into it. I think the writing kind of gets that. It's kind of they call it like PTSD. You know, it helps you kind of like, okay, don't rush into it. Just go into it one piece at a time. But just know, whatever you do, you're making them happy. You're keeping them proud of you. And with a lot of the writing nowadays, it does help because I tend to have moments where I'll be like, okay, do I keep going or do I stop? I'll second guess myself. We all do that. We all second guess ourselves. You know, I'm working on a folk horror right now that I just about threw 4,000 words out the window.
Right.
And I'm like, no, because if I throw these 4,000 words out, I'm gonna puke someplace because I'll never get those words back.
All right.
And I've always been kind of one of those that I always stay active because of what they expected from me when they were alive, when they were around, you know. And if I failed, they always gave me a hug. They always, you know, you'll publish it someplace else. Maybe it wasn't fit for that place. You know, that's the one thing writers have to. When it comes to writing, comes to being a writer, you take risk, and sometimes that risk does equal reward. Sometimes it doesn't. You know.
Okay. All right. So, like, switching gears, if you can meet one of your favorite authors from any time period, past, present, who would it be?
Well, I have a lot of them.
Like, who would be like your number one? If you have like a number one or a number two, like who would be like, someone in your top five?
We'll say, um, we'll go literary, and then we'll go horror.
Okay.
Literary, Hemingway, hands down.
Okay.
I love the Old Men in the Sea. Love that book. Horror wise, I'd have to say Jack Ketchum.
Okay.
I had to say Jack Ketchum because he sent me an autographed picture, and I keep it. You know, every day I look up at it when I'm feeling like, do I need to do it? And I'll kind of look at the picture and go, no, you don't need to do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. Okay, then I'll
Right.
throw it away. You know. But he's always been a real big influence on my writing. He's always been. I remember reading Off Season when I was 19, trying to learn how to write horror fiction, and then I just get whacked right in the face with that one. And I've always wanted to kind of like, not so much pick his brain, but just tell him like, how did you get over, rejection? How did you get over, just kind of like, how did you get over the rigors of it? How did you come out of it? And in the words of Stephen King from Shawshank Redemption, how did you crawl through the sewer and come out clean?
Right.
But I've always wanted to sit down with, especially Hemingway. That man was just, one of his quotes is my favorite quotes, and it's, just sit at a typewriter and bleed. And it's one that's always stuck with me for the longest time.
Right. Okay. So we got about, 5 minutes left, and I think that's like ample time for you to like, promote your work and, tell people where they can find you on social media and things of that nature. And so with that, I mean, take it away. Yeah, just take it away. However you want to promote yourself, you have the floor.
If you need to find me on social media, I'm on Instagram under Horror Author 9. I'm also on Threads at the same Horror Author 9. I'm on Blue Sky under Bubby Writes Horror 9. The Bubby term is my niece calls me Uncle Bubby. I have a extensive list of horror, novels, whatever your taste is. There's a haunted house story called 1342 Lindley Road, if you like your haunted house stories. There's Dark Avenues, the novella, which is also a ebook by itself, and it's part of the collection. I have Consuming Darkness. If you like creature features, those are always good. For those of us that grew up with creature features like Jeepers Creepers and Night Flyer and all them there. There's Bad Allergies, which if you like your thrillers gory, go for that one. There's Abby's Wrath. That's a supernatural mystery that has to do with bullying. And there's a book called Dead River, which is a zombie apocalypse. It would probably be compared to Walking Dead. It has nothing to do with the Walking Dead. I was a George Romero fanatic. Love Romero. I agree with the stumbling zombies. They shouldn't be running. And I have my short story collection, Strange Discovery and Other Strange Discoveries. It is out it is out on Amazon. You can pick up a copy there, and I will update my social media when I get further updates about the Splatter Western. But to give you a little clue what the Splatter Western is, it's been compared to 30 Days of Night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that's all, then I would like to thank you for, coming on and, just telling us about yourself and your writing journey and just letting the world know that we have another prolific horror author. If for those that need a break from Stephen King and want to read somebody else, we have Brian over here who's catching up.
I'm trying.
Right. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and see you on the flip side.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm welcome to come back anytime.
All right.